Hello and welcome back to Fundamental Questions in Judaism. We are continuing our conversation of the proofs of God. Previously, we discussed two proofs from creation. One is from creation itself, the fact that the world exists and didn't always exist. If they didn't always exist, there must be a creator. And we proved that through the Big Bang. The Big Bang proved that the world didn't always exist, and therefore it was created. It can't create itself, so it must be created by a creator. The second proof we brought from the complexity of the world, especially biological life, and we proved that the fact that regardless of evolution, the first cell and the chance of it being created with the DNA that can be transferred later on is remarkably low. If it was created by chance, those chances are remarkably low. And add on to that, the chances of that cell surviving and developing into something so complex as a human being in a limited time span of time, relatively limited, is also highly unlikely, and therefore leading to the second proof of God creating the world, a creator creating the world. The third approach is actually very surprising. It's also from science, but it accepts all the disproofs that were claimed in the previous classes. And it says the following: there are fundamental laws of physics that explain creation, that explain evolution, that explain how something simple can develop into something complex. That all happens only based on the fundamental laws of physics. It's all physics. It's all predetermined. That's exactly what atheists claim. It says, yes, it is all predetermined by laws of physics. But who created those laws of physics? Those laws of physics are laws. They're not random behavior. They're laws of physics. What would be more amazing? They have the fact that if someone would hit a domino, and the domino would hit another domino, like you have on these YouTube videos, where one domino hits a ball, the ball pulls the string activates the switch turns on the light sensor activates the sprinklers make fill a bucket with water, the bucket pulls the lever, and the lever turns off the switch. Now, if someone sees something so complex, even though it's all predetermined, the fact that that simple act and there are laws that follow in itself is the proof. Meaning, yes, even if you accept that evolution happened the way scientists happen, but who made the laws of evolution? They're predetermined by the basic laws of physics. But who made those basic laws of physics? Based on quantum physics. But who made the laws of quantum physics? No matter how far you go back, the fact that there are laws, and these basic laws over time, from complete chaos, from tohu create order, prove that these laws were pre-designed laws. Because random laws can't create order out of chaos. The fact that order was created out of chaos proves that these laws, someone thought about them. There's a programmer to those laws. And even if he doesn't intervene afterwards, just let the laws act on their own, and the world naturally is created. Even if you would say the world comes into the laws of physics that existed before before creation allow things to spontaneously come into existence. Great. Who created those laws that allow things to randomly come into existence? That is a law. If you have rules, that means there's someone who made those rules, someone who enforces those rules. The rules can't create themselves. Something must control those rules, make certain things act differently than others. So this is the proof from creation. It's not from the fact, the end result necessarily, but the fact that there are laws to begin with altogether. We don't live in a chaotic world. The atheist disproof with that I heard once is that maybe there are no laws. Maybe we just happen to live in a place in reality where we feel that there are laws of physics, but it's just randomness. That's not convincing because all science is based on the assumption that there are laws, and we use these laws all the time. So that's the proof from the laws of physics, part one. There's another proof based from the laws of physics. Not only that they exist, that's the proof number one, that there are laws, rather that there's a correlation between those laws and human beings' understanding. Meaning, the fact that we understand these laws and we can use equations, human-made equations, to describe these laws. E equals mc squared. Those are all human concepts, yet for some reason, the laws of physics acts in a way that, in a language that human beings can understand. You ever see in sci-fi television shows, people go to outer space to meet aliens, and the aliens happen to speak English. Of course, there's translators, but the chances of us meeting another species that speaks the same language as us, impossible. There's no reason they should be speaking the same language. Similarly, the fact that the laws of physics can be spoken, exist in a language that human beings can understand, proves that God, a creator, someone made them for that reason. The laws weren't just randomly made, the laws were made in a way that human beings can understand and later utilize them. Now, one could claim, oh, evolution. There must be a evolutionary advantage to understanding the laws of physics the way they are, but that's a stretch. Because human beings have survived for many decades, eons, without knowing the laws of physics, without understanding the depths of E mc squared. We did fine without knowing E equals mc squared. We did fine without understanding how the various equations of modern physics. As a species, it's very unlikely to say that in the last 300 years, we developed an advantage by being able to understand these concepts. One could claim that, but it's very unlikely. It's more likely to say that the fact that there is a correlation proves that the Creator created the laws of physics, or created man, in a way we can understand the language of the reality around him. So those are two proofs from physics, from creation, but not creation of the world itself, but rather the laws of physics that govern reality. Either the fact that there are laws altogether, there are rules altogether, and that these rules, these fundamental laws can lead to amazing realities, creation, evolution, all based on fundamental laws of physics. Who made those laws? A creator. They didn't create themselves. The second proof is from the correlation between man and those laws. The fact that we can understand them, describe them, also points out that the creator of man is the same creator of the world, and he created the man in a way that he can understand those laws, or created the laws in a way that man can understand them. That is proof from God, from creation, from the laws of physics. We're moving on to a different direction, a different way of proving God. Two proofs where people did not look at outside in reality, externally to prove God, rather looked inside. One is inside their mind, and one is to look inside to their soul / emotions. The most famous of them is the ontological proof. Ontological proof, those who hear it break into two groups. One group laugh and mock and think it's ridiculous. The others think it's genius and indisputable. So if you feel yourself in any one of the groups, that's completely normal. If you think it's ridiculous, you're in good hands. If you think it's amazing, also good hands. I found it many times depends on the person's, how much he loves math or logic altogether. So what's the ontological proof? It has many, many variants. I recommend Googling online to read a lot about it. I'm going to give a simple one, but definitely can be expanded a lot more. It goes the following. We ask, the question is, does God exist? In that question, we have a certain concept of God. We're asking, does this concept of God exist? Let's pause a second and say, okay, when we ask, does God exist? What is this God we're talking about? Now, we described that God in the previous class. A few lessons back, we talked about God. And one thing that's agreed upon, most people talk about God, they talk about some perfect, limitless, infinite entity. Okay, so it's supposed to be perfect without flaw. That's usually how when we ask about God, we're not talking about, does a flawed God exist? Does some titan that lives in Mount Olympus exist? We're talking about the Jewish God, which is flawless and infinite and perfect. Okay, so does that God exist? Now you said he's perfect and flawless. Now I'll ask you, does something that does not exist, is that flawed? The answer is yes. Something that, relative to something that exists, something that does not exist is lacking. What is it lacking? It's lacking existence. Now existence does not existence mean on the physical world, rather even any type of existence. Something, no matter how amazing it is, if it doesn't exist, it's lacking existence. Now, God, we said, is not lacking. God is perfect. When we're asking about a perfect God, not a God that is lacking. So if God is not lacking, God is perfect, so existence is part of God's definition. So when someone asks, does God exist? He's asking, does something that exists exist? The answer is yes. Something that exists does exist. Meaning, by the fact that human beings have a concept of God in their mind, that itself proves that that person already believes in God. He may not be aware of that, but he's asking, does something that exists, does it exist? And the answer is obviously yes. If a concept did not exist in our mind, then you can, there is the creator of the world. But here we're asking, the God, which is perfect and flawless and infinite, does that exist? And the answer must be yes, because otherwise it wouldn't be God. Because it would be lacking existence. And if it's lacking existence, then the answer is no, it doesn't exist. Why? Because that's not God. God is the perfect entity that is not lacking anything, including existence. Now, those who many mock this proof, even though big philosophers stand by it, and they say, what are you talking about? Here, I'm imagining a winged unicorn. The winged unicorn, part of the definition, it's an existing winged unicorn. The fact that I imagine it exists doesn't make it exist. So the fact that you imagine God exists doesn't make it exist. It's your imagination. It has no effect on reality. But that's not a disproof. Why is that a disproof? Because you combined two separate things. You took the idea of unicorn, added wings, and then added the concept of existing. These are different notions that you put together. The idea, only God, when we talk about God, embedded in the definition of God is existence. Unicorns is not, existing is not part of its definition. A unicorn is a horse with a horn and maybe wings. You want to add something external and say, oh, my specific unicorn is existing. Okay, then you're imagining a specific unicorn that doesn't exist. But God, there's only one concept of God. There's not various concepts of God. His existence is not something external that you imagine of him. It's part of his definition, part of the concept of God. Is a circle circular? Yes, a circle. How do you know a circle is circular? Because you called it a circle. Therefore, a circle is circular. A triangle is a triangular because it's called a triangle. That's what defines a triangle, is a triangle. Does God exist? Yes, because that's what defines God. Part of God existing is being God. Therefore, you cannot ask, does God exist? By asking it, you already proved that God exists, because you ask, does he exist? The only disproof that could be said about this was Kant. Immanuel Kant went against this, and he wanted to claim that, well, okay, that we learn from here that all we can know about the reality is the reality as it's perceived by man, reminding us what we talked, man's perception of God versus God's perception of himself. He says the world we experience is not the world itself, rather the world of human experience. In our mind, God exists, but does that mean that God exists outside of our mind? No. That's what Immanuel Kant want to claim. That the ontological proof, all it proves that God, the idea of God exists in our mind. Now, two claims against that. First of all, well, if it exists in your mind and you live your life, shouldn't you be living your life according to your understanding, your view of the world, man's perspective of the world? That's how we live our life in any other aspect, how we perceive it, how we understand it. We don't say, well, I don't understand, I don't have an external perspective, so I'll ignore it. So even if Kant is right, maybe we should live our life according to human understanding. The second claim is that the fact that it exists in our mind, even itself, should be enough to prove God exists also in the external world, but we're not going to elaborate on that. If you want to read more, I recommend Googling it. Many articles were written on the topic. Next class, we will discuss more proofs of God's existence.